Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. We are excited about today's presentation featuring Aaron Peters, Product and Implementation Manager of Phoenix Data Systems. Aaron will demonstrate how HTM departments can increase their efficiency by having multiple departments use the same system. This enhanced flexibility gives the appearance of a unique system for each department, while allowing a single CMMS team to manage the entire system. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor, Phoenix Data Systems, creators of the AIMS CMMS software. AIMS is the preferred system for managing assets, facilities, and maintenance operations for healthcare organizations around the world. Phoenix Data Systems is committed to offering the finest products, services, and support available in the healthcare industry. Visit goaims.com for more information. A few announcements before we get started. If you haven't already registered for our upcoming MD Expo, please do so today. We will be in Dallas, Texas on April 16th and 17th. Details and registration are available at mdexposhow.com. While you're there, please make sure to sign up for our newsletter so you'll always have the most up-to-date information. Let's give one lucky attendee the opportunity to win a Webinar Wednesday t-shirt by answering the following question. In what year was Phoenix Data Systems founded? You can find the answer on our sponsor's website, and you can answer by using the questions feature on your webinar dashboard. As always, today's webinar is eligible for one continuing education credit from the ACI. You can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey. Both more details on this will be available after the webinar. We will wrap up today's presentation with a live Q&A. You can submit your questions at any time by using the questions feature on the GoToWebinar dashboard. We will get through as many questions as time allows. As I mentioned earlier, our presenter today is Aaron Peters. Aaron, you may begin whenever you are ready.
Thank you very much. All right, so a little bit about myself first, and then we will jump in to talk about the rest. So my name is Aaron Peters. I've been with Phoenix Data Systems for 16 years. So there's a hint to the question that was just asked. It's longer than 16 years. So I've been here 16 years, started out in quality assurance, and then ended up with conversions implementations. I'm sure some of you on here have worked with me in that realm. And then I recently, a few years ago, took over the product manager role as well and took over the AIMS 3 project to get that going in high speed. So that's my background there. And about our company, Phoenix Data Systems, we've been in business a while. I won't tell you how long, that would be cheating. So we've been in business a very long time, almost as long as I've been alive. We've been in business. We are in 18 countries. We have over 3,000 hospitals that use AIMS. And our customer support, as she mentioned earlier, is absolutely top tier. We resolve over 90% of calls on the very first call. Our satisfaction survey results are over 95% satisfied. So we take that very seriously. It's a huge piece of who we are, is helping take care of you guys and doing a very good job about it. So that's who we are as a company. Obviously, we make the AIMS software, which you'll be getting a look at today. So the agenda for today, who we are, I just covered all of that. An overview of the primary software functions. I'm going to give you a very brief overview of what AIMS is. And it's a CMMS system, so it should look very familiar to pretty much everyone on the call. But I'll show you what we can do just very briefly before we jump right into the main topic of how multiple departments can effectively use the same system. This is obviously a big deal right now. A lot of hospitals, especially the larger systems, want to start combining things under a single umbrella, and I'll show you ways that we help facilitate that and make it very easy for everyone to use. We'll talk about some reporting stuff at the end. Depending on time, we'll see how much of that we can get into. but obviously it's a very in-depth reporting system. There's a lot of on-screen charts and exports and things like that. So we'll get into a bunch of those as we go, and then a little bit at the end as well. And then finally, we'll have a Q&A at the end as well. So what is AIMS? AIMS is a modern CMMS. It can be used for single hospitals, one department at a single hospital, multiple departments at multiple hospitals, anything in between. We have customers that are, small hospitals at just a single building, and then we have some that literally span the entire country. We have almost the entire country of Ireland, for example, is using AIMS at this point. So we're a very large system, and we can be used for any size hospital. We are exclusively designed for the healthcare industry. There's a big benefit to that. So while there are other systems that have been adapted to work for healthcare, we are designed to work for healthcare. That's where we started, that's where we still are. We don't really branch out from there, and that allows us to stay on top of your needs better and really focus what we work on to just work for you guys. So we're not trying to please anyone else really, just the healthcare industry. Any department in the hospital really can use it. That is our goal, but we're not trying to branch out to real estate or anything else like other software might be. It can be utilized by multiple departments, biomed facilities, any ISOs, IT departments, housekeeping. These are all different departments that use it today. So we can easily facilitate any of those and even combinations. We know a lot of the larger systems have basically all of those. They'll have biomed facilities, IT, they'll have an ISO branch that does some for-profit work on the side. It handles all of those very, very easily. It is browser and device agnostic. This is huge. Mobile is the future. We all know that eventually everything's going to end up on some form of a mobile device. The ability to be standing at a piece of equipment, pull up your entire system right in front of you, and have access to every part of the software, all of the reporting, the messaging systems, that's crucial. If it's not crucial today, it'll be crucial tomorrow. Our entire software can be used on any device, not a subset or anything like that. If you pull AIMS 3 up on a smartphone or a tablet, you get the entire system. So if you need to order parts, you can do it right from there. If you need to look up contract details and call a vendor, you can do that all right from the device that you're holding. That's a big benefit. Most of the modern CMMSs can do it. Obviously, we're on board with that as well. Built-in and customizable workflows. This is a huge one. So when you're talking about different departments, they have different needs. They have different workflows they need to accomplish. Biomed pretty much work on equipment all day, every day. That's what they do. Facilities teams, however, they're going to work on areas. They do lots of rounds and area type work. They have projects, construction. Everything that they do is a very different set of workflows from biomed. So to that end, it's got to be customizable to that level. It can't just be one system that everyone has to use the same way. So those customizable workflows are a big deal. How are they customized? Do you have to do it yourself? Do you have to talk to your IT team to make a change? Do you need to get programmers on your own? Or do you need to talk to the vendor and have them program it for you, possibly for a cost? All of those things should factor in. So we're going to look at some customizable features of AIMS 3 today that'll help show you what's possible. And then the last big one is interfacing with any third-party software, including CMDBs like ServiceNow. Cherwell's one that's come up recently. So there's a lot of different CMDBs out there. We can interface with anything, and I mean that truly. We have an interface with a customer right now to software they wrote. We're working with another one right now to interface to software that they wrote. It's not a major vendor, obviously. It was their own programmers that created the software. We can interface to that. So whether it's flat file exchanges, APIs, just straight web service calls, doesn't matter. We can interface with any software in any capacity. Obviously, we love the real-time ones. Some are just flat file exchanges. Not our preferred method, but it's not broken. So if it's a flat file exchange, we can do that. If it's real-time, something like a ServiceNow, which obviously you would want real-time, we can handle that as well. All right, now with that, let me get switched over to the software. And then we will jump right in. Okay, so this is AIMS 3. I'm going to give you, like I said, a brief component overview here. Don't want to take up too much time with this, but it's a full system. We want to show that it's a full system, and you know, you can see everything it can do, and then we'll jump right into the root of the matter we're trying to solve today. All right, so this is obviously your home screen. It's the employee dashboard. Works for both managers and single techs. So if you're a tech, you get a slightly different view. Obviously, you wouldn't see a whole team of people here like you would with a manager, but this is your dashboard. It's all the important information to you. You can choose what charts and things you want on screen. I have my PM completion percentage as a manager for my entire team here. The red line is today's date, so as the month progresses, this will move across. I need to make sure everyone stays in front of that. They'll have their own version of this that's just themselves, so they know where they're at as well the second they log in. I have my work log up here. Again, as a manager, I'll see all of my techs. As an individual tech, this will be just ones that are assigned to me or my team. We'll be showing teams in a little bit. Other charts, I'm not going to get into all the different charts that we have here, but these are interactive. So if as soon as I log in, I want to see my urgent work orders, I can do that. These are all my urgent work orders. I can then hit the little button and go to them and, you know, decide if we're going to work on them right away, what we're going to do. So there's a lot you can do with this home screen right here. It is the driving force behind how everyone's going to use the software, because it's where all the critical information is going to be right at your fingertips. We'll be back on this screen later as well. Equipment, pretty self-explanatory. I think we do a very good job of showing very critical messages that you can click on and get more information. So I can see it's under contract. I know what's included. I have a phone number I can call, all right, without leaving an equipment or work order record. Pictures on screen, make sure that either the device information is correct or that I know what the equipment looks like. Not necessary probably for your techs, of course, but this is also visible in our web request system. So it can be viewed out there. So if a nurse or someone is entering a work order, they can see it as well, and just make sure they enter the right equipment number out there. Generic equipment information, I assume most systems have this. So we have our life cycle information. This is going to have all of your end of life, end of support, life expectancy for all of your different reporting metrics that you do for replacement and EOC and things like that would come from here. A full risk setup. This is extremely customizable. Any way that you use risk, we can accommodate. The history, which is going to show all the work orders, sums up the hours and all of that for each work order. Shows you any open PMs. You can click on this and go right to the PM that's open, when your next one is due, and when your last one was. Just all information we try to put right at your fingertips. Scheduled events, warranty, IS information, expansion fields. These are our user-defined fields. All information that you are probably tracking today or would like to be tracking. Our IS fields, for instance, we have over 185 fields in here about the device, any hardware, software, networking information, what type of security it uses, any vendor support. So if vendors come in and do any patches or upgrades, you can track all of that along with costs associated with it if necessary. If it's connected to an RTLS system, etc. So we have a lot of fields in here. We take it very seriously. Our goal is to give you every opportunity to track the information that you need inside the software. Work orders, again, pretty self-explanatory. Track your work order information. If you have pictures, those show up on screen. You still have all your critical messages. This is where the techs work. It's where they track labor, parts. You know, standard work order information. Again, some things I think we do very well out here as well. We'll get into later. Contracts component, track your rates, track any contracts that are applied. Each individual equipment that's attached to a contract gets its own information. So it may be the whole contract is set up to cover labor, parts, and travel, but this particular piece of equipment, for whatever reason, it only is covered by labor. So it's more of a real contract setup. Not everything under the contract is exactly the same, and we allow you to set that up individually here as well. Anything that's under an active contract, over in the work order section, you can apply the contract labor and materials. And that's where reporting would come in at that point, so you can track how much value you're getting for the contract based on how much you're paying for the contract. It's very important to track that information. We make it very, very simple to do so you can check your evaluation. The parts component here, pretty self-explanatory, tracks your parts. You can have multiple warehouses. It tracks an inventory at each warehouse. So you can really keep on top of where your parts are, how much you're using them through the transaction log, all the different information you can track out here, including costs and everything. Customer service, these are the automated emails. So as you create work orders, your people create work orders and complete work orders, these are those automated emails that say, thanks for submitting a work order. Here's the synopsis of it, so they know which one you're talking about. And then when your techs close it out, then an email would automatically get sent back to whomever requested it and would tell them it's completed. Let us know how it went with the survey. So that's customer service. Export to Excel, pretty self-explanatory. Data managers, will spend quite a bit of time in several of these today showing you how to set this all up. These are all your lists. Equipment types, manufacturers, models, failures, all of this is set up in here. So it's one central location you go to set up any list of information in our software. System setup, these are obviously all your system settings. We'll be in a few of these today as well. It's all the, set it up once and forget it sort of places in the software, all set up under here. EasyNet is our web request system, as I mentioned earlier, and then of course we have reporting as well. So that's a nice system overview, shows you what we're capable of. There's a lot of other components and interfaces, obviously we're not going to get into today, but that's the core of the system. So how do multiple departments use the same database and not bump into each other? In AIMS 3, we have a feature called assignment profiles. This is the core of it. So once you set up this assignment profile, this is going to be what really limits what people have access to and what they can see. There's other limitations I'll show in a minute, but this is the core of it. So out here, I can set up any department I want, even combined departments. So I could have biomed, I could have biomed specialists out here who work on even a smaller list of equipment. So what happens when you edit one of these is you have the ability to set a lot of information that's limited to this group. So I can limit my service departments, which that's an AIMS term, but it's clinical, facilities, radiology, all the different departments like that. I can limit the equipment types they have access to. Obviously, biomed shouldn't have access to air handling units. So I can take those out. It doesn't just limit the equipment, it actually limits the drop-downs themselves. So when my biomed tech is logged in and using the system, they're not going to be able to even see or choose anything. They won't know that other devices are even in the database. They can't report on them, they can't see them, they can't see what's in the drop-downs. That makes it fairly unique in that a biomed tech is going to think they're in a unique database. A facilities tech is going to think they're in a unique database, all the way up to director if that's how you're split. But then whoever's administering the system can see both. And I'll be showing all of this in a little bit. I'm just showing you the setup right now. So I can limit all these different types of information, equipment types, even work order types. There are work order types that are only going to be for your facilities team. Biomeds tend to use the standard equipment or work order types. They're going to have your correctives, demand or repair, whatever you call it. They have a PM, they'll have, project. They have a few like that that are fairly standard. Facilities teams, we tend to see with some more specialized work order types. They may have grounds maintenance as an actual work order type. So you can limit that so that only they see those. They can't accidentally be chosen for another department. And it really just helps separate everything. So this is the core of it. So then facilities obviously would have different things set up for them. You could have a combined that's different as well. It's very easy to make and set these up, and you can even combine them. So if I did have a biomed and a radiology, and I had some techs that worked on both, you can actually merge, not really merge them. You can duplicate them and combine them together with one step. So you don't have to create a new one and go through and recheck everything. You simply come up here and hit this duplicate and say, I want to merge those two, give it a new description and hit save. It doesn't actually merge them. It's just going to create a new one and use the existing profiles to set all the information behind it. Very quick, very easy to do. So for your facilities teams, this is easily where you could set up trades. So you could go out there and say, these are my HVAC techs, what they have access to, and then my plumbers, my electricians. You can set those up in here as well as these names. And then really limit what they have access to from there. And then of course, as a manager, you would have all of them. So then you'd be able to use that kind of merge feature up there to merge all of those into one, and you'd have your global setup for your manager. Very neat, very easy way to set it up. It really just takes seconds. These are all multi-select dropdowns. So you can simply come in here and check more things very, very simply. So that's the core of it. And I'll be showing a whole use case later. We're going to be logging into some different people. The next place where you can limit things is, of course, security. So security is where you can really start to split out not just security levels. So we have standard security. You can control down to the field level what someone has access to. So if you don't want them changing the cost center, you can take it out. They'll still be able to read it. They won't be able to edit it, however. So you can field by field say what they have access to change, what they have access to not change, what they can view, what they can't. So if you don't want them viewing your contract information, you just turn it off. It's pretty simple. So that's standard security setup. We have this extra section here for custom headers, however. So by the security level, you can change what fields show up in their header section. Over here at equipment and work orders, we have this header up top. This is the header section. You can determine by a security level which fields people have access to see or not in this header. That includes user-defined fields. So you can have a set of user-defined fields over here that maybe only relate to facilities equipment. So for your facilities techs, you turn those fields on. They show up top here. They don't have to click through to the different tabs. They just show up on the header. So no matter where they're looking at this, they'll see those fields. Biomed won't see them. They don't need them. So you have full control by the security level to determine what fields are visible or not in the system. So that again is another piece of customization you can have to show that the system looks unique. Really, it's the same system. Biomeds don't need to see those. They won't see them. They'll be there. They'll be hidden over here on the expansion screen, and they won't even need to get to this screen. Your administrators, however, of course, can see everything. And again, I'll show all of this in just a little bit. So that custom screen layout is another piece that really helps differentiate two different departments inside the system. The next one, back over here at data managers. We'll start with employees. I'll talk about teams in a second. So at the employee level, you determine what they have access to by the assignments tab. So you can limit what facilities they can see. You can choose an assignment profile for them. So this is where you'd see those assignment profiles we had set up, and you can assign one to them there. And you can even have an employee settings profile. This isn't even something I was going to get into today, but these are all the settings that make this tech unique. It makes all of my techs have the same options, the same pop-up messages, the same requirements are all set up at this level. So I only have to set them up once, and then they apply to all of my techs. Managers, I set up again. Then if we add a new feature, or if you add a new feature later on, you just assign it once to the setting profile, and you don't have to go and edit every single tech or every single employee in your system. So this assignment screen is where you can, again, limit what they have access to. We see a lot of databases where the biomed and facilities departments are actually facilities themselves in the system, what we call facility. In other software, it's called a segment or something similar to that. It's a hospital system, a campus, if you will. So they'll just split biomed and facilities into two separate sections, two separate facilities. So here's where your facilities techs would have access to just that facility. Your biomed techs would have access to just their facility. If you use a combined facility where it's the hospital name itself, which is the preferred method, then they would both be assigned to that same facility, and the assignment profile would be your main split. Now, teams are something I see more on the facility side than I do the biomed side. Facilities teams tend to work more as a team where the whole team is assigned and the next person grabs it. Obviously, we've seen that on biomeds as well, but I see it more often on the facility side. The advantage of a team is it's a single setup. So I choose my team, I choose all my team members, and then from here, I can use this team throughout the software. If I assign the team to a work order or a PM schedule or something like that, the whole group gets assigned to it automatically. And then whoever grabs it would just assign themselves versus the team, and it would disappear from the rest of the team. So it's a very simple way to use it. And the advantage of using a team is actually more at the manager level. So when you turn a manager on, you can choose their team members individually, and that works just fine. Or you can just assign the team to them. And then later on, team members, of course, change. You don't have to go and re-edit the manager. You just go and change the member in and out of the team, and it's automatically, because the team was assigned to the manager, it's done. They're automatically updated. Their home screen, all the ways that they can manage them with our software are automatically updated just by switching out the team member. So again, teams is where you would set up your plumbing, your electricians. You can do it at the assignment profile. This is a little more visible on screen because you'll actually see this phrase on screen. So you may choose to do it at both. So that's kind of the setup. You have your assignment profiles, you have security, employee assignments, and teams. Using all of these different methods, I'm going to start opening up some other windows here, and we'll show you different logins. Right now, I'm logged in as an admin. I can see everything. I see biomed, I see facilities, I see everything. So I have some macros down here for facilities work orders, clinical work orders, all work orders. I can run any one of these. So if I simply run this export here, these are my facilities work orders. We have wheelchairs, we have air handlers, etc. So this is just a quick open work order for my facilities team. I can run that as an admin, no problem. I can do the same thing with clinical, and then of course, I'll just run it real quick here so you can then see the difference between the combined one. So here's clinical. This is where we're going to have MRIs and whatever, aspirators, patient scales, whatever it is that you do. Stretchers, if you do stretchers, that goes back and forth between the two different teams. So this is where you have all your clinical work orders. And then if we look at the combined, obviously, I think you know what to expect here. When you look at the combined, this is everything. So now I have my AHUs right next to my MRIs. So I'm an admin. I can see everything. So this is how an admin can manage the system as a whole because they have access to everything. There's no limitations. You can't even set an assignment profile for an admin because the whole goal of the admin is to be an administrator of the entire system. So this is how you can get combined reporting out. You can get costing, you can get end of life information as a whole, replacement information. You can kind of combine all those into a single report and get a total budget, for instance. So that's what a manager view is. Now, if we switch our login here, I'll just go to a new tab and do it. All right, so if we log in here as Beth Allison, she's a facilities tech. So her view is very different. If we look down here at her reports, we're not going to see the combined, we're not going to see the biomed. She doesn't have rights to those. So what she's going to do, she's going to run here and have very limited info that she can actually see because she's a facilities tech in this case. So if I export this, it's going to match the facilities one that we just saw, but it's the only one that she has access to. So it limits the reporting that she can even do. So if you didn't catch it, if I went too quickly, this is a frequently used reports list down here. It's right on the home screen. So as they use reports over and over again, their top 10 will be visible right from their home screen. This is here for everybody. So as admins are running reports constantly, their most used reports will be visible just literally with a single click. So you hit this, it takes you to the report or the export, whatever it is you're running, and you hit run. It's very, very simple and quick to use. But as we come over here to equipment, they're not going to see anything other than what they're allowed to see. If I click next and previous through here, we have fire doors, we have AHUs. You're not going to see anything other than what they have access to based on their assignment profile. You can't search for it, you can't do anything. So in the search screen here, you hit this drop down, there's nothing else even to select. They don't know that there's even any other data in the system. That's the big advantage. They each get their unique setup, and it just makes it easier for them. So one of the problems with some other systems is a combined list. So if I were to hit equipment type as a facilities tech, you guys don't work on that much equipment. You're more areas and that sort of work. You don't tag light bulbs, for instance. So most of the work orders, we've seen up to 90% of work orders in a facilities database don't have tag numbers, equipment numbers on the work orders. So when I hit this equipment type dropdown, I don't need to see the 1,000, 1,500 different biomed equipment types in the list. I wouldn't be able to access the equipment anyways, most likely, but there's no point even seeing them in the list. So it just makes everyone's experience a little more user-friendly. And then of course, the same thing on the other side with a biomed tech. When you log in as one of those, you'd have the exact opposite. You wouldn't see, for instance, the air handling units. So I can show that real quick here. So when I hit this drop down here, as a biomed tech, you're not going to see the air handlers, you're not going to see the wheelchairs. There's things you're not going to see here because they're just filtered out. So it makes it, again, just a little bit easier for everybody to use. Now there's some other features that you'll get the benefit of. They weren't put in here specifically for this purpose. Let's talk about parts management next. So parts is a tricky one. There are thousands of parts. We've seen tens of thousands of parts in databases. Even getting the inventory in and managed is a trick. And then using now work orders can be a different trick. So of course, in a conversion, we'll get your parts in. That's part of what we do. But once they're in there, how do you make it so I don't have to search through thousands of parts? And this applies to both sides across the board. There's two main ways we do that. The first, and again, this is technically part of the conversion, is over here at the model level, we have a linked parts section. So this is where I can link parts directly to this model. These are the parts that are used here. So a lot of this comes from manuals or other things. They'll list some parts out in there, or just your knowledge of the past. Or again, in the conversion, we'll just look and see what you've used and add them as part of the conversion. So if your software doesn't have anything like this today, that's okay. That doesn't mean we can't convert into it anyways. So we can get all this data in here. And then on top of that, when you go over here to actually apply the materials, there's a section at the bottom. So it's called linked parts. This will show any linked parts that you have, but it also shows any parts that have been used on this model of equipment. So I have a defibrillator here. If there were any parts used on this, they would show up in this list on this exact model, not the type of defibrillators. That would be too broad. But this exact model of defibrillator, it would show on this list, and I could simply choose it and then enter my quantity and leave. So it really, this part down here really helps speed up your ability to apply parts to a work order quickly and accurately. So while its original purpose wasn't necessarily for the split departments, you'll both get the benefit of it because you don't have to search for parts and go through all the different types of light bulbs when you need a surgical light bulb. It'll just show up on here. So that's a very neat feature that helps with parts usage. It's a place we know a lot of you struggle, is to get the parts accurately on the work orders. And I'm not even talking about tracking an accurate inventory. We do that as well. I'm talking about just getting it on the work order so you can report on it and track costs and things like that. We see a lot of people struggle with that. So we've put that linked part in there to try to speed that up and make it much easier to use. And then some other features along those same lines. weren't put in here necessarily for this exact purpose, but obviously the benefit is one side or the other, and that's non-tagged PM schedules. So you can have what we call scheduled events. We actually stopped calling them PM schedules for a very specific reason, because you can plan other types of work. If you have an upcoming construction project, you can create a series of work orders, things that need to be completed for that project. You can create those, assign them out to the right people, get them to generate on the correct date. If it's a one-time project, you can choose a one-time interval. So it generates once and it's done. If it's a recurring thing, rounds or anything like that, you can generate those as well. This is all location-based. So obviously this is more for our facilities teams. Biomed, you guys use a little bit on the rounds and things like that that might come in handy here, but this will be probably 80% of facilities PM schedules are going to end up here, and then all the different projects they have. So this would have been a very good tool to use for kind of pre-COVID or during COVID as rooms needed to be switched over to be new ICUs, something many of you I'm sure went through or at least heard about. You could actually create that as the project. You could still choose a procedure with a series of steps in it. These don't have to be just PM procedures. For instance, I have an AEM risk analysis out here. So you can do your AEM risk analysis right from here as well. But you can still choose a procedure. You can multi-assign people to it. So if something like transitioning a room, that's not just biomed, that's not just facilities, that's a group of people that have to switch a room. There's negative pressure problems, there's all these different things that come into play, and you could actually schedule that out to happen, multi-assign your service department, multi-assign your employees, and get everyone working on the project until it's completed. So this was actually added before we put in assignment profiles, but its main use is that of it can be used by either department, and it still keeps things individual. So again, I'm still logged in as my biomed tech. So you'll notice I don't have the option to choose facilities. It's not part of my profile. Whereas if I switched over to my admin, it would be part of the profile. So I would be able to schedule events for any department. So that's a huge benefit here, mostly for facilities teams. Clinical engineering teams, you'll find use for it as well. We've seen a lot of people use this for that purpose also. And then the last way, I actually need to switch back to the admin for this one. The last thing is risk. So risk has taken somewhat of a backseat recently because of the CMMS changes to 100% completion. So as all that happened and AEM came into play, risk became a little bit less important because everything's 100% now. But it's obviously still used. It still has a purpose. It's part of your AEM process, I hope, is how you use your risk. So we actually have the ability to set different risk types. So if I come back here and look at this one, this is a clinical engineering. So for my clinical engineering risk, I check function, physical risk, maintenance requirements, service history, and the environment. This should look very familiar to many of you on the clinical engineering side. It's been in use for a very long time. Facilities techs tend to use fire protection and a different series of 5 or more often 3. So the way all that is set up is over here, you can set up your different risks. So I have a clinical engineering risk, I have a facilities risk. So in here, you can set up any number of fields that you want. These are the 5 fields I had turned on. That's where I can adjust the formula. That's just the standard first 2 fields plus the average of the last 3 fields. But you can change that. If you just use straight addition, you can do that. And then in each one of these are the actual values in the dropdown. So you can set up completely unique risk. I have it in here just by, again, what we call service department, but you could actually set up different risks for a lot of different things. So if you want a different risk for HVAC than you did for plumbing, you could actually set that up with a different set of questions and answers. And which ones you have access to is set up over here at the service department. So you can actually set up which risks are assigned to this service department. So if you had your facilities, that's the reason we only saw the one there, is because that's the only one I had assigned to that particular service department was clinical engineering. So you have your different risks in here, and this is where you assign them. And then based on the equipment that's chosen, that's the risk that shows up. So your facilities teams would only see a facilities risk setup. Your clinical engineering teams would only see your clinical engineering risk setup. So it's another way to just keep it unique. So each team thinks it's unique, but your admins have full control over everything. That's about it. That's about where I'm gonna stop with the presentation. So there's a lot more we could get into. I'm just trying to be mindful of the time. So I think I'll stop there and open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Aaron. That was a fantastic presentation. As a reminder to our audience, if you have a question for our presenter, please use the questions feature on your GoToWebinar dashboard. We do have a few questions that have come in already, so I'll start with those. We have two different departments using different databases. How do they get merged during the conversion?
Very good question. Not a lot I can obviously show on this one, but it is something that I still falls under my umbrella. So product manager is my official title, but I still handle the conversions and implementations, so I'm very familiar with this. So the way conversions work is we can easily combine any number of databases. I think our record is 11 databases 13 maybe, that we combined into a single AIMS database. Obviously the timeline for that changes. It's usually a little bit longer than a standard single database, but it's as simple as we get copies of the databases. We work with you to figure out what the quote unquote best one is, the best, cleanest data, and that'll be where we start. That's the one we want to merge everything else into. And so we can match things up and not corrupt the data too much during the conversion. So we take one database, we get into AIMS, that's our core. Every other database that comes in gets matched to that. So we create as few new, again, what we call data managers, your different drop-down lists, as few as possible. So if there's already a GE Healthcare in there, we don't want to create a second one with a slightly different code or a different address. So the conversion will happen and keep your original GE Healthcare, add the new address or phone number or whatever it is in, and then when we bring the data in, it just uses the one that you have. We do that over and over and over again. So for each database you want brought in, it's the same process. We merge it. We do a lot of data cleanup as part of the conversion. And we do all of that in-house. So it's a guy that works here in Michigan with us. He does most of the conversion work, and then we review it with you constantly. We do a first conversion, we sit down and review it with you. We do a cleanup conversion, we review it with you, all the way through go live, dress rehearsal and go live. Even at go live, we still do an extra data review with you to make sure that everything came over properly. Our goal is no data lost at all. So very good question. That's how it works though. So if you have two different databases, we simply do two conversions, merge them together, clean up your data in the process. We don't want you to have an active equipment status and an in use. We merge that, we work with you to figure out which one of those two you want, and we clean up the data for you automatically. It's all just included. There's no extra fees for any of that. Standard conversion for us. Very good question. Thank you.
All right, our next question, Aaron, is biomed and facilities each service the ER. What controls do you have in place to prevent overlapping of data?
Really, it's a lot of what we just showed. So the overlapping is all down to the assignment profiles, the assignments, the security. It's kind of everything we just talked about, with assignment profiles being the true backbone of it. So in here is really what's going to keep that data separate. Even if it overlaps by anything, so if it overlaps by even an employee or a requester or anything like that, this will still keep it separate just based on the other assignments that you have. So it's most of what we just talked about.
All right, our next question is, do you convert our existing data into AIMS?
Obviously, I just touched on that a second ago, but of course, yes is the answer. So conversions are something we take very seriously. It's my goal, those of you, again, that have maybe worked with me in the past, if you're sitting in on this, my goal is to not drop a single piece of data. So if you have a field of data, I want to bring it in. If we don't have room for it, we put an expansion field in. If you have a bunch of different fields and we need to combine them into a note field, we do that. We do all that cleanup for you as just part of the process. There's no nickel and diming when it comes to our conversion process. It's all in-house. It's my team that works for me, and we do the conversions. It's what we're very, very good at. We have a proprietary conversion tool. If you wanted to get a test site put up, we put test sites up, we convert your data into the test site. These are all just things that we do. It's a very good tool that we have, and we convert every single piece of data. And like I said, we review it with you. So we make sure that each of your checkboxes comes in, all your settings, your reports even come out with the same answers. We do all of that as part of the standard conversion that we do. Good question.
All right, next is, what is the timeline for implementations from start to finish?
There's a lot that goes into that. That's a tricky question to answer, but so if it's a single database, regardless of how many hospitals, how many techs, that actually doesn't come into play, oddly enough. If it's one database that we're bringing in, we can get that live. I think our record is 6 weeks. We had a site that their current system was actually shut off, and they were just on paper. We got them live in 6 weeks, and it could have been 4. That is not the standard, but it's something we can step up and do if we need to. I would say a standard conversion for a single database is probably 90 to 120 days. So 3 to 4 months is very, very standard for us. And then if you need it faster for any reason, site's being shut down in 2 months, we'll get you live in 2 months. Obviously, it's quality over speed. So we'll move as fast as you want to move, but we always recommend more time if possible, so you have extra time to review. But 3 to 4 months is very standard. And then each additional database past that, maybe add a month, although sometimes we can do multiple at a time. It more depends on your availability, your team's ability to learn quickly. If we can get more people in the room to learn all at the same time, then we can do more conversions at the same time as well. But 3 to 4 months standard.
Okay, can we host our own site, or is cloud hosting the only option?
That's one of the benefits of AIMS that you may not get with other software. So we are not based on the ServiceNow platform. I mentioned earlier we can interface with them. We can do a full interface. Every field in our software can match to every field in their software, no problem. So that's all very standard stuff that we do. But the advantage we have of not being part of them, or one of the advantages, is we can host you or you can host yourselves. So if you want your own site on your servers, that's probably the majority of customers that we have are still set up that way. So it gives you better control over it, and the security behind it and all of that all comes from your IT staff. Usually makes them a lot more comfortable. So, and then, working with Active Directory is easier. All of that's just a little bit easier when you host it yourselves. Not that we can't do it when we host, it's just easier. So you can host yourselves, no problem. We help you with the install. We even install a test site on your servers, so you can still test out the batch functions we have. We didn't even get into today. All the global cleanup tools that we have, any upgrades you want to test before it goes into production, we help you set up a test site whether we host you or not. Good question.
All right, our next question is there an area where the MDS2 form can be stored?
The MDS2 form, so we have document attachment all over the software. The next piece we're working on is actually so you don't have to store it unless you want to. We're actually looking at an OCR reader to read it in for you. But yes, there are attachments. Anytime you see this attachments pane, you can attach an MDS2 document. So you can attach it. I wouldn't make a lot of sense here at the equipment level, but over here at the vendor level, you can attach them here as well. So if you had an MDS2 document, you wanted to attach it, you would attach it out here at the model, and that's automatically visible on the equipment if you decide to set it up that way. So when you add an attachment, you can say where you want it to be visible at. We don't actually attach it at those levels because they get updated, of course. So if you attach a service manual here, you can make it visible on equipment and work orders. But then if you get a new version of it, as happens frequently, you simply change it out here and you don't have to change the equipment or work orders. It just automatically kind of is viewable there as well, the updated version. So MDS2 would typically be stored here on this exact screen for the model that it applies to. But like I said, we are working on an OCR, character recognition, character reader, to pull that data directly in from the MDS2 document. So it is on the horizon.
Great. Our next question is, do you have EOC reports with charts and graphs?
We do. They're typically custom to whomever uses them. So I'm not sure I have any to show you out of the demo site here. So whoever asked that, I think I'll get your name at the end, and we can send you a sample one once we take customer name and stuff out of it. We don't give out customer names without permission, but I think we can probably send you something shortly after this, once that's done. EOC is a little tricky because everyone looks at things slightly differently. They have their kind of formula at the end that works a little differently. Some people care about the equipment conditions, some don't. There's a lot that goes into it, so I'm not going to say I have one just off the shelf that works for everybody. It is something that we work with you to kind of customize and come up with what works best for you. Same thing with capital replacement, capital planning. A lot goes into that. Everyone's just slightly different on it. So reports in our system are very, very customizable. I can show you one here real quick. I'll just hit an open PM report one. So they're customizable right on screen, but even this report itself, the background of it, any report that's off the shelf in our software, you have full rights to change. So if there's something on here, you want to take off serial number and add in location or anything like that, you have full rights to change any of these reports. We send a tool along with the software, and you just open this up and edit the file, replace the column, and then you're on your way. So we could have an off-the-shelf one because of that reason, but that's just one report, one of the two main ones that's so customizable for every different customer. So like I said, I can send one out. If anyone would like one, just let us know in the chat, but I don't have one off the shelf here for that reason.
That's great. Thank you, Aaron. Our next question is the equipment information and PM requirements and other details preloaded, or do we have to enter that information ourselves?
I'm going to take a guess on exactly what that means, or maybe I'll just answer it two different ways. So if you get a brand new piece of equipment and you're going to enter that in, if it's a model you've never seen before, it's a brand new model, you'll have to create the model. But we are a model-based system. So once that model exists, and a lot of this is at equipment type, some of it's more applicable there. But you set this model up out here. So this is where you choose the equipment type, the description, priority, which service departments. There's a lot in here, of course. You set up your risk, your default risk for it, any scheduled events that it may have, warranty information, and again, attachment, end of support, and linked parts. You set all this up one time out here, and then when you use this on a new piece of equipment, all of this defaults on. So you'll get your default PM schedules, your default warranty, your default set of risk, that all shows up on your equipment automatically. So you do enter it once out here, or like I said, in the future, when we get the OCR in for the MDS2, obviously a lot of this will pull in off of there. So, but once you use it on a new piece of equipment, that all pulls on. You may have to edit the PM schedule date. There might be some things, of course, you have to edit, but we're a model-based system for that reason. You set it up once, and then it all defaults onto the equipment record. So I think that answers the question, I hope.
Okay, our next question is, how far back do you recommend converting data?
This is totally up to the customer. We've had customers bring in over 20 years of data, and we've have had others say cut it off at 7 years, 6 years. It might depend on the state, I'm not sure. Whatever the lab equipment's 10 years and biomed 6 or something like that, or at least that was the last customer we did this for. So it's up to you. We've had customers bring in 3 years. We've had customers bring in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It doesn't matter. The conversion tool can handle any of that. So Whatever you want to bring forward, that's what we'll handle. What I typically recommend is full history for any active piece of equipment, and then anything that's retired more than whatever your cutoff is, 5, 6, 7 years, then that's what we'll cut it off for those. So we can even split it that way versus your active and retired equipment. It's a very neat conversion tool, by the way, if I didn't mention that.
That's great, Aaron. Thank you so much. That's all the time that we have for today. That was a fantastic presentation, and I'm sure our audience learned a lot. I would like to encourage everyone to visit today's sponsor to learn more about the products and the services that they provide to our industry. Please visit goames.com. A quick reminder that you can obtain your continuing education certificate by completing the post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you will be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We will be back next week with another webinar. Make sure to visit our website, webinarwednesday.live, for more details and for complimentary registration. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you.